So the next phase is basically to do cleanup on the layers. You can do this technically with a duplicate of the original. When you do the duplicate layers, that way you only have to clean up one version of the photo. But I usually do clean up per layer because I just want to get things separated. So the easiest layer to kind of show off cleaning abilities is the stadium layer. So I'm going to shut off all of the other layers. We kind of have to get rid of some people, and we have to also clean up a lot of chunkies in the stadium itself. So I'm gonna ignore bad spots on the players because we're just gonna get rid of them. But I am gonna get rid of the bad things that we see, and depending on your camera move, you don't have to do all of it. You can sometimes leave chunks or pieces or just get rid of legs. It really depends on your camera move. So I'm gonna show you how to clean plate this just in case you have to. The first thing I'm gonna show you is the spot healing brush. And you wanna make sure that you're on your photo layer and not your layer mask. We're gonna get our spot healing brush, which is along your toolbar here. Depending on how your Photoshop default setup, it might actually be already there. And again, if you click and hold, you can see that the shorthand for these tools is J. What's nice about the new spot healing tool is that unlike the old one where you had to sample a chunk of the photo, this one is just smart enough to have an algorithm that looks at the surrounding pixels to kind of do a best guess scenario. And you can tell that by going to the top of the menu bar, and you can see that it is set to be content aware versus proximity match. They kind of do the same thing, but I feel content aware is just a little bit more savvy. You don't have to make an alt selection for this. You can just literally start plucking away at things. Now you can draw this thing out, and that works when you're in an area that's all the same color, but if you go over an area that's not the same color or has a gradient, you're actually going to reveal a little bit of your brush stroke, and you can kind of see that AB that happens there. So you can take out colored things. Just be wary of it. Just make sure your brush is big enough so that way it can sample the rest of the gray pixels around it. It's a bit of tedious cleanup work, but doing a good job is the earmark of a professional. Now we've cleaned up all the little spots, blips, hairs, scratches, whatever we found distracting. We tried to keep what we think is bokeh there in the kind of corner by the shoe. So you'd want to leave that. That's an optical effect from the camera and the lensing and the light. The next step is kind of getting rid of the chunky parts. So the next tool I'd like to introduce you to is the Content Aware tool. It's actually in the same menu as the spot healing brush, and it's a couple options down. And how this tool tends to work is you can grab a clean section of part of the plate and you can move it or you can extend it. And you want to switch your mode to extend because by default it'll be on move. And then over by structure, you do want to keep that kind of a relatively high number, but you want to keep your color a little bit lower. You can probably even up that to 3 so it blends maybe just a smidge better. We're lucky because we're working in a black and white photo, but when you're dealing with color, then that color comes to be a little bit more important. So that's why you have a low number on the color. Let's say we're gonna start removing this upper player's hand and arm here. We actually have a relatively clean chunk of concrete both before it and after his hand, and it's nice to have these kind of things because it helps keep the pattern less repetitive. And the other nice thing is you can grab a really solid structure. So usually I try to gun for like what I know is a continuous thing, so I'll grab like this first row of chairs, shoot all the way down, and you can make this an organic shape. It doesn't have to be a perfect square. Get some of the black, swing up along the thigh, and go back up to that front row of chairs and close off. And then literally you can just grab it and kind of try to half cover the arm. You want to get rid of the leading edges, and then make sure your bottom and your top look aligned. You can also rotate it if need be. Once you're done, you can either hit return or the check mark, and that'll approve it. And then you need to deselect. So when you get to the close to the other edge, you're going to want to start from the other way and kind of eat down. And again, you want that first row of chairs because it's just kind of this white blurry blob. You want to get down where there's black. And then you're going to come in the opposite direction. And again, this is just to get rid of the leading edges, because as you can see in that top row on the underside of the arm, it starts to blend and it doesn't really know what to do. And then the problem with selecting and moving again is it tends to take the leading edges of pixels. So that kind of mutates. So sometimes you really do want to deselect, grab again, and then try to cover. It works if you're not intersecting with anything, but if you are intersecting with things, you can't just keep grabbing and moving. So now we should be able to close the gap entirely, and there we go. And so to cover the hand, you just want to grab a piece of black. That's big enough to cover the hand in one foul swoop. And again, you can rotate and move these things around. What's important is still preserving that film noise. If you find yourself making things bowing and you don't want it to bow, you can also grab the smudge tool and you can make your brush really, really big. And yeah, soft brush will do. And you don't want to hang over any part of the thing, and you need to pay attention to up at the top there's a strength. So you want to bring that strength way down, because you might Rambo this and you don't want to do that. I like to get my circle center and then slowly lift up. There we go. And that way you don't have like a weird bulge there. We're going to cover the knee in the same way, which is using that content aware tool. There's clearly a color difference, so this is kind of where you have to use a little bit of your own Photoshop trickery and some old school tools to kind of make a blend. And so now that we've got this nice kind of semi-open space, we can worry about connecting the top part of the stadium. So we need to clean up a little bit more of this arm here. So again, just kind of use the smudge tool to kind of even stuff out if you feel that it budges. It does not need to be perfect. The player is going to be covering most of this, so it doesn't need to be like super photo real at this point. The next tool I'm going to show you, I'm going to use the middle ground layer. And I'm going to show you a different tool that works similarly to the content aware tool, move tool, and that is the patch tool. The patch tool works slightly differently than the content aware. It actually kind of works the opposite way. So you actually select a chunk that you want to get rid of, and then you move that chunk to an area that has what you want. And you can go left or right, up or down, it doesn't really matter, but you don't want repetitive patterns. And specifically with the midground, you do have to pay attention to the focal plane, right? Where is that sharp grass? Where is that blurry grass? And does it make sense? So right about there looks good. And boom. Because this is the middle ground shot, we also don't want dirt in the shot. So again, you can use the patch tool to quickly just eliminate those little flying particles from the cleats. Depending on your camera move, you can usually get away with only cleaning up bits and chunks that reveal themselves. So it's up to you. Once you get this in After Effects and get your camera move sorted out, that'll let you know immediately what you need to clean. This is a great place to save, and we'll place this into After Effects.